Hi, everyone. This is Rich Berliner from Charged Up, and I'm really happy to have Tom McCalmont from Paired Power on with me today. And Tom, it's really great to talk with you. We've spoken on the phone a number of times, but I really didn't have a great understanding of what Paired Power did until I really went to the website and studied what you folks do. It seems like you've got a lot going on in the ecosystem,
We do. Yeah.
just, putting a charger on my property. So why don't you talk about that? Why did you, first of all, I see you've been in business more than 10 years. You're a California company. Why did you get into this and what's your background? Well, give us a little bit.
Sure. I'd be happy to. Rich, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting us to participate in Charged Up. So I've been in the solar industry for a long time, 25 years, and I've started several successful companies before Paired Power. And one of those companies, it's an engineering business that does solar design still today. And we had the idea, I wonder if we could charge electric vehicles using solar directly. And so that was kind of the original idea that Paired Power developed. We patented it. We developed a DC to DC system directly from the solar panels to the vehicle. But over time, that's evolved. So what we do today, we call microgrid EV charging, and I can get into detail about what that is. But basically, it still uses the power of the sun to augment and supplement the power that you get from the utility grid. And the combination has a number of great benefits.
Interesting. So I saw the sort of the pop-up solar piece you've got that looked very easy to install.
Yes.
Question I had was, is that modular? In other words, if it looks like you've got a module with a charger and the overhang with solar on it, but can I put 10 of those stacked up next to each other? Or is
You,
that the way it works? Or do I need a microgrid in the middle of all that? Tell me how that works.
yeah. So all of our systems are microgrids. And what a microgrid is it combines different energy resources into one system. So it combines solar energy. Can often combine grid power. It's optional, but it's often helpful if you have a little bit of grid power.
If you can get it, right?
If you're near it. It's helpful if you have battery storage because that allows you to time shift the solar energy to where you need it. And then you have load. And load is where am I delivering that resultant energy? It could be to an EV to charge it. It could be to a device to charge it. We have several products that can do this. So, in the pop-up that you talked about, one of the problems with solar canopies is they're difficult to erect. It takes time. Your parking lot's torn up for long periods of time. So one of the products we developed, we call Pear Tree, is a pop-up solar canopy. It is a microgrid. It's got solar panels, it's got batteries, it's got load, and optionally can connect to the grid. To your point, you can cascade those if you wish to get more power. Typically, you wouldn't cascade 10 of them. If you wanted a system that big, you would opt for our larger product, which we call Pear Fleet, which takes more of a traditional solar canopy over the parking spaces and combines that with the batteries and the load to generate a microgrid. So both of them are microgrid solutions, but different sizes, different scale.
Right. So what's the difference between a microgrid and just a series of batteries?
So a microgrid is combining all of those energy resources. And there's a lot of interest in microgrids now because of just frankly grid unreliability, emergencies, the grid goes out, fires or storms, or expense. The grid is very expensive and getting more expensive all the time, and people like using renewables. And so a microgrid allows you to still be connected to that grid, but have the resiliency that you get. If the grid goes out, I can still charge vehicles. I can still make use of the power that's available from the sun.
So in essence, a microgrid is sort of a combiner, if you will, like in the radio frequency world that I came from. It's sort of a combiner, combines the grid power with solar power, rather than just having a series of batteries there. It's really
That's
the
right. You
brains
could
of
think of it
everything.
that way. You could think of it as an intelligent combiner because one
Right.
of the things that's really important in it, in a microgrid, is to have that management software that coordinates the flow of the energy. And you wouldn't want to just combine the products and not have any kind of intelligence to it. So we have a lot of intelligence in our system that allows us to direct that energy flow to the place that it's needed in the most optimum way.
Right. So you also got charging equipment that you're selling, but you're also, it seems like, are you the direct provider of software too? Have you developed your own software and that's in the unit that I might buy from Paired Power?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, we have our own software, and I can talk about if you're interested, I can talk about the different components of software.
Very much, yes. That's a big hot topic in my book these days because I think it's an area that most people from our business don't know.
That's right. There's a lot of just to comment on this before I talk about the software, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with drivers about the charging experiences that they're having out in the world. One of our employees went to San Diego for the weekend last weekend, and he drove an electric vehicle, and he said, "Okay, well, I'm driving an EV. I'll try different chargers." And had a lot of trouble. He'd go to chargers, a bunch of them are down, or they're in use, and there was no way to reserve his time, things like that. So what software does, we call it the four pillars. There's four main components of software that are important to give a great experience. First is design software. So we have to be able to design the system in a way that it's going to be effective. Second is how do we operate it? And we use artificial intelligence in our system. We operate it in a way that makes very intelligent decisions. The computer itself makes intelligent decisions about the operation of the energy flows. So, if we don't, like an example would be you've got solar energy. If a cloud goes over, that's going to reduce the power coming from the solar array. We have to pull it from somewhere else to make up for that lost power. Maybe we pull it from the battery or we pull it from the grid. So, and doing that in real time is part of the sweet sauce of that operational component. Third component is customer service. What is the experience of the driver? If they have a problem, for some reason the charging session doesn't start, they want real-time connectivity to get to somebody who can help them. And then the fourth is the driver experience. What kind of data do they get? Are they learning as the charge session is progressing? Are they understanding what's happening, how full their car is? Can they get that data in an immediate way? So those are what we call the four pillars, and they're all important to giving a great experience.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So what I'm interested in is to understand, is there enough solar energy created if I don't have the grid hooked to one of these systems? Is there enough solar power, enough energy generated with the solar panels to charge my car and have car after car after car come up to that charger?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And the answer is yes. What we provide and what we think the predominance of the market is really interested in is level two charging. There's different levels of charging. Level three is fast charging. That's where you're on the highway. You want to fill your battery as quickly as possible. It's like you're stopped at McDonald's and you want to charge your car. We're not so concerned about that market. That's an important market, but it's not the predominance. The predominance is level two, which is a slower charge where you're doing something else. You park your vehicle, you're at work, you're at school, you're visiting retail. And while you're doing something else, your car is miles are being added to your car, range is being added to your car. And that's the much more common scenario. And so in that scenario, people just need enough to get to their next destination. They don't need 100 miles of range or 200 miles of range like you do on a fast charger. They need 10 or 20 or 30 or 40. They just need enough for their commute distance or their next trip. And so with that kind of orientation, a solar powered charger is perfect. It'll deliver anywhere from 75 to about 150 miles of range per day. That's more than enough to charge a bunch of vehicles. So
Gotcha. So, if you're a movie theater operator, this seems like the perfect thing. You've got a couple of parking spaces that you can allot to putting up this solar pop-up, if you will, in the parking lot.
right.
Somebody comes to the movie, he's going to watch a 2.5 hour movie. They come in, they park their car, they hook it up, they go into the movies, everybody's happy. And basically, the movie theater owner doesn't necessarily have to spend any money on electricity to let that customer use the system.
Exactly right. Yeah. And we have systems like that in a bunch of cities in California and some on the East Coast. And that's exactly how they're used. People There may be a bunch of drivers that come and go throughout the day. A scenario like a movie theater or a retail parking lot, and maybe they're only there for 2 hours, but during the 2 hours they're getting a bunch of range, and it's enough to take their vehicle to the next destination.
Right. So the software on from your end can also help me, the movie theater owner, make money
Totally.
because I don't have a grid to charge something over and above necessarily. So if the grid is charging me 15 cents and I'm charging the uh, the car owner, the EV owner, 35 cents, and I'm making a 20-cent margin, I don't have that if it's charged solar, that's free. And
Exactly.
then you have the ability now to compute how much I'm being paid off this, correct?
That's exactly right. That's one of the sweet spots of solar charging is exactly what you said, is there's a higher margin in the transaction. And the difference on a grid charger isn't as great as you indicated. It's actually pretty small. You might pay 50 cents on a grid charger for the charging session, but 45 cents of it is going to the utility. So
Yeah.
the site owner is only making a nickel.
Well, you're
On
in
our
California,
system,
so it's
right.
worse for you.
On our system, they're making the full 50 cents,
Right.
right? Or whatever the number is. Right.
Huge
Yeah.
advantage.
Yeah.
Huge advantage here. So tell me what your thoughts are, and we've been writing this in the newsletter for quite a while about the carb situation in California sort of getting its hand slapped on that whole thing. Is that, in your view, is that sort of a good thing for guys like you or a bad thing?
And are you referring to the mandate? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in other words, the federal government is saying,
Yeah.
you know, California, you can't run everything that's going on around the country. My state, New Jersey, has joined in, but it seems like that now is going to be more handled in a business-like way rather than a protest sort of, we've got to solve this problem today.
Yeah. Right.
Your view of that?
Yeah, mandates are always controversial, as you know. We saw that during COVID with masks. So 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 they're targets for politicians, and California has a mandate right now that they'll stop selling gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Federal government, I think, is trying to undermine that. Whether it does it or doesn't, I don't think it changes the pace of adoption. I think adoption will occur irrespective of the mandate. Mandates are nice, but like I say, they're controversial. And the reason I think adoption will occur is because people love the cars. If you have the experience of driving an EV, it's quieter, it's cleaner, it's faster to accelerate, it's lower cost maintenance. And so, once you have that experience, you're not very likely to go back, frankly. And so I think people will continue to buy the cars and the market will continue to shift to electric vehicles, irrespective of whether there's a mandate or not.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you on a lot of topics there, except you have to be sensitive to the people in sort of urban areas, inner cities, where there isn't going to be a convenient way. I live in a private home. I assume you live in a private home. I could
Right.
pull up, I could charge in my garage or outside my garage. I have a buddy who's got solar on his roof, Tesla power walls in his basement, and five electric vehicles that he charges inside and outside. He's got a closed system that's perfect. But if you're somebody who lives in New York City or LA or in a place where you don't have your own garage and there's no charging on street, to make it a mandate that you can no longer buy an internal combustion engine vehicle is going to be very difficult for that segment of our society, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And you may be right about that. I think, some of I think there's a lot of attention on this problem because there's a lot of awareness that, like in multi-unit dwelling housing, apartment buildings, things like that, it's a much bigger challenge for those people to have an EV charger or to drive an electric vehicle. But there's a lot of interest in trying to address that problem. One good action that can be taken is for new buildings that are constructed to have a code requirement that they're EV ready. And so they're electrically available, the capacity is available to be able to add EV chargers to those buildings. And I think that's no different than any other code requirement, right? So
Yeah.
it's a something that as technology moves forward, becomes a part of the National Electrical Code. And so I think those kind of measures can help with that consideration.
And my only take on that is if you can't find a parking space with a parking meter to put your car in at night, it's going to be even more difficult to find a parking space with a charger sitting on it that you can charge on the street in that setting.
Right,
And so, again, we all are cognizant of the fact that, EVs are coming in a big way, and the changeover is, I think you're right about the fact that people like them when they get them. The
yeah,
problem is if there's an element of society that lives in a more urban area, it's going to be difficult. But that's a separate issue for another time. I think that someday we may see these things in the roadway. We may see overhead charging. There are
right.
maybe lots of other things that happen to change that. So
The other thing I'll just comment on that point is, I think people get confused a little bit. They've come from a gas car world where you went to the gas station to fill up. And so when they first come to the EV world, they think, oh, it's the same. It's actually not the same. Electricity is everywhere. You don't have to go to a station to get electricity. It's everywhere. And so what I think will happen over time is we'll proliferate chargers everywhere. And so anywhere your vehicle might be parked, there'll be an available charger that you can plug in. Now that'll take some time to get there. Maybe it's 10 years, but eventually it'll be the case. And so that'll address the problem that you're talking about, where they can just go wherever they go and there'll be a charger there available for them to plug in.
yeah, and I think as prices of EVs come down, that adds to the element of our society who can afford to buy them, whether they're rebates or government grants, with them or not.
Right.
Well-priced vehicle is a well-priced vehicle. So
That's right.
I think we need to be off that, the crack of government funding for that kind of stuff because I
Yeah,
think
that's right.
will
Yeah,
actually help.
I mean, I always say that if an industry on incentives is an industry on drugs. So if we get off the drugs, we're probably going to be healthier. So,
That's true. So, how is the business right now for you in terms of are you finding there's too much work for you, enough work for you? Is there enough resources for you to hire to do this work? What's the business situation for you at Paired Power right now?
yeah. So first of all, it is good. It's health. We're healthy, but I do think there's a little bit of caution right now that in general, not just with us, but across the broader economy, people are a little worried right now about, is there a pending recession and all of that. But what we're seeing is there's a lot of interest in what we're doing because there are many situations where the grid capacity is just not big enough. So if you want to electrify a fleet, let's say you're, San Jose or New York City, and you're trying to electrify your fleet of light duty vehicles, you probably don't have enough grid capacity at that parking lot to do it. But if you can augment it with solar, you now might have enough capacity. So it helps to solve that problem. Another good example is workplace charging. A lot of commercial employers are interested in providing chargers for their employees because more and more of their employees are buying electric vehicles, and some of them, to your point earlier, live in apartments. And so if they can't charge at home, could they charge at work? And so there's a lot of interest. And again, I think of that as really a fleet scenario. And so if you put some solar panels there and a limited grid, now we can provide 50 or 100 chargers in a place where maybe before you could only do 10 or so. So,
Well, I felt very strongly that having solar and having battery, either backup or battery storage, is vital to this whole thing.
that's right.
Because if you're a school bus operator and that bus must go out, but there's a blackout overnight, you've got a
Exactly.
problem. You've got a real
Exactly.
problem. And that is not something that you can surmount and just say, oh, it doesn't happen that often, so I'm not going to worry about it. But
Right.
if those 10 or 12 buses you've got don't roll that morning, you've got parents who leave their kids at the bus stop when that bus doesn't show. It's a disaster. So
That's exactly
I've
right. And
always,
school.
I felt very strongly about that piece, and I think you certainly must feel that way too.
And school buses are a great target for electrification. And they actually don't have a very long range. A lot of people don't realize that a school bus might only go 40 or 50 miles per day on its route. So it doesn't need a huge battery, but it does need a reliable fuel source, exactly to your point. If the grid goes out in an emergency, you don't want those school buses to be sitting there and not able to be driven. So,
Right.
so having a solar microgrid that allows them to be charged regardless is a big plus.
Yeah, there's an element of discussion out there that I've been a party to that if you have a school bus, you must have level three charging. But it sounds like you're a level two guy, and that
Totally.
level two may be enough to charge that bus overnight.
It
Excuse
absolutely
me, may
is.
not be enough to charge it if they got to come back during the day and get another, little bit of juice. But if is that your thought that there's enough in a level two for that bus?
Ma- Absolutely. Many, many situations, level two is more than sufficient for fleets. Some of those decisions for level three are being driven by people who come from the gas cars. Like the decision makers are driving gas cars, and so they think, oh, we need a gas station. We have to fill it up as fast as possible. And the reality is you don't. The bus is only driven 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning, and an hour in the afternoon. So it's got 22 hours it can be charging. That's plenty of time to refuel that bus. And at level two, it does not need a level three.
Yep. Yep. So that's an interesting part of this. Well, Tom, is there anything else that we haven't covered? We did software, we talked about hardware, the grid, the solar piece, and certainly the most one of the most important pieces in my opinion is the microgrid. But is there anything we haven't covered that you think is important?
No, I think we covered the topics well, Rich. As I think I've conveyed, I'm very bullish about the future. I think electric vehicles are here to stay. I think they're going to be increasingly adopted across society, and we believe that the solution that we have is a really good one for many, many charging scenarios. And so we're just very positive about the potential in the future.
Good. Well, I want to drive everybody who'd like to read the entire four pillars piece that you wrote for us in this week's newsletter. It's on our website, chargeduppro.com, and they can read your entire piece. And I really appreciate you doing that because I think you've got a lot to say on the software side of this whole thing.
Good.
But the fact that you are covering all the bases that go into putting this charging infrastructure in total is, I think, real important, Tom.
Good. Well, thank you, Rich. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, and we would, if there are people who are listening who want to learn more about us, our website is pairedpower.com, Paired power.com.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank
Tom,
you for the
thank you. This
opportunity.
is Rich Berliner from Charged Up, and I was talking to Tom McCalmont today from Paired Power. Tom, thank you for being here. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rich.